The metal doors of the command center slid open with a sharp hiss. Commander HFY stepped inside, his forearms moving in perfect rhythm as he walked. His dark green skin gleamed under the bright lights, and his compound eyes scanned the room quickly. The other Caltharian officers stood at attention, their insect-like bodies rigid with military discipline. General Warthick waited at the center of the room, standing before a large display screen that showed star maps and battle plans. The generals. Scarred Face told the story of countless wars across the galaxy. His voice was deep and commanding when he spoke. Commander HFY, you have been chosen for a special mission, the general said. We have discovered a new world that will serve our empire well. The planet is rich in resources and has a perfect climate for our colonies. HFY's mandibles clicked together, a sign of interest among his people. What opposition do we face? General, the world is inhabited by a species called humans, Warthick replied. They are young and primitive. Our intelligence reports show they have only recently developed space travel. Their weapons are basic, and their society is divided into many small nations that often fight each other. The general touched a control panel, and the display screen changed to show images of Earth. Blue oceans and green continents filled the fronts. View. Cities with tall buildings dotted the landscape, connected by roads and railways. It looked peaceful and undefended. The humans have a short lifespan, Warthick continued. They live for less than 100 years. They are small, weak, and have no natural armor or weapons. They rely entirely on tools and machines for survival. HFY studied the images carefully. The humans appeared to be bipedal creatures with soft skin and no visible defenses. They looked nothing like the fierce warriors of other species the Caltharians had conquered. How many soldiers will I command? 50 of our best warriors, the general answered. More than enough to establish control. Your mission is simple. Land on their world, defeat their military forces, and prepare the way for full colonization. The High Command expects this to be completed within 1 month. The commander felt a surge of pride. Being chosen for such an important mission was a great honor. He had fought in 12 campaigns across the galaxy and had never failed to achieve victory. This assignment seemed almost too easy. I will not disappoint the Empire, HFY said, placing his right hand over his heart in salute. I know you will not, Warthick replied. Your ship, the Void Talon, is being prepared for departure. You leave at dawn. 3 days later, HFY stood on the bridge of his warship as it traveled through hyperspace toward the Sol system. The Void Talon was a marvel of Caltharian engineering, armed with plasma cannons and protected by energy shields that could deflect almost any weapon. The ship's hull was made of the strongest metals in the galaxy, and its engines could outrun anything the humans might send against them. His second-in-command, Captain Rexstar, approached with a datapad in his hands. Sir, we have received updated intelligence about the human military capabilities. HFY took the datapad and read through the information. The humans had armies equipped with projectile weapons that fired metal bullets. They used explosive devices and primitive aircraft. Their most advanced weapons were nuclear missiles, but these were slow and easy to intercept. Pathetic, HFY muttered. Our personal shields can stop their bullets, and our armor can withstand their explosives. This will be easier than I thought. As the Void Talon dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, alarms began to sound throughout. The ship. The sensor officer called out from his station. Commander, we have multiple contacts approaching our position. 37 human vessels are moving to intercept us. HFY looked at the tactical display with surprise. The humans had detected their arrival and were already responding. Their ships were smaller than the Void Talon, but they moved with purpose and coordination. Open a communication channel, HFY ordered. Let me speak to their leader. A few moments later, A human face appeared on the main screen. The creature had pale skin, dark hair, and determined eyes. He wore what appeared to be a military uniform. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force," the human said. "You have entered our space without permission. State your intentions or turn back now." Zex-Hi was amused by the human's bold words. "I am Commander Zex-Hi of the Caltherian Empire. We claim this system for our people. Surrender now, and you will be treated with mercy." Morrison's expression hardened. "We don't surrender to anyone. If you want our system, you'll have to take it." The communication ended abruptly. Zex-Hi turned to his weapons officer. "Prepare to engage. Show them the power of the Caltherian Empire." The battle began immediately. The human ships attacked in coordinated waves, their weapons firing streams of energy and explosive projectiles. Zex-Hi was surprised by their tactics. They did not engage in single combat as most species did. Instead, they worked together, covering each other's weaknesses and concentrating their fire on individual Caltherian vessels. The first human ship was destroyed within minutes, its hull torn apart by plasma fire. But instead of retreating, the remaining ships pressed their attack even harder. When a human vessel was badly damaged, it would charge directly at a Caltherian ship, trying to ram it before exploding. "Sir, we have lost 2 ships," Captain Rextar reported. "The humans are fighting with unusual intensity." Zex-Hi watched in growing concern as more human ships were destroyed, but they never stopped attacking. When Admiral Morrison's flagship was crippled and burning, the human commander sent one final message. "Tell your friends we're just getting started." The ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, taking a Caltherian cruiser with it. The remaining human vessels retreated toward Earth, but they had made their point. These creatures were not going to surrender without a fight. As the Void Talon and its surviving ships continued toward Earth, Zex-Hi found himself troubled by what he had witnessed. The humans had fought with a ferocity that seemed to go beyond simple military training. They had sacrificed themselves without hesitation, showing no fear of death. Perhaps conquering this world would not be as easy as the general had promised. The Void Talon descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star. Zex-Hi stood at the observation deck, watching the blue and green world grow larger beneath them. His ship had lost 12 vessels in the space battle, but he still commanded enough firepower to crush any ground resistance. The humans might have fought well in space, but on the ground, superior technology would win the day. "Sir, we have selected a landing zone," Captain Rextar announced. "The area is called the American Midwest. It has open terrain perfect for our operations and is far from their major population centers." Zex-Hi nodded his approval. The plan was simple. Land his forces, establish a base of operations, and then advance on nearby cities. The humans would see the hopelessness of their situation and surrender. After all, what could primitive ground forces do against Caltherian armor and weapons? The landing ships touched down in a vast field of golden wheat. The crop stretched for miles in every direction, broken only by scattered farmhouses and roads. Zex-Hi was the first to step onto the alien soil, his boots crushing the grain beneath his feet. The air smelled different here, cleaner than the recycled atmosphere of his ship. Within hours, his forces had established a perimeter and begun construction of a temporary base. Caltherian technology made quick work of the task. Energy barriers were erected, communication arrays activated, and weapon platforms installed. From orbit, the remaining ships provided sensor coverage and fire support. "Commander, we have movement on the horizon," reported Lieutenant Kexmo from the sensor station. Human military vehicles approaching from the north. Zex-Hi climbed to the top of the command tower and used his enhanced vision to study the approaching force. A convoy of armored vehicles moved across the plains, kicking up clouds of dust. The machines looked crude compared to Caltharian technology, but they moved with purpose and discipline. "How many?" he asked. "Approximately 200 vehicles. And 3,000 soldiers," came the reply. "They appear to be from what humans call the 82nd Airborne Division." The human force stopped about 2 miles from the Caltharian position. Zexhai watched through his scope as soldiers poured out of their vehicles and began digging defensive positions. They worked with surprising speed, using tools and machines to create trenches and barriers. A human vehicle approached under a white flag. Zexhai decided to meet with their commander, curious about what these creatures might say. A vehicle stopped at the edge of the energy barrier, and a human officer stepped out. The man was tall for his species, with dark skin and graying hair. His uniform bore insignia that marked him as a high-ranking officer. He walked with confidence, despite being surrounded by alien technology and weapons. "I am Colonel Sam Rivera of the United States Army," the human said. "You have invaded our world without cause. Withdraw your forces now, and we will allow you to leave peacefully." Zexhai almost laughed at the audacity of the request. "I am Commander Zexhai of the Caltharian Empire. Your planet now belongs to us. Surrender, and your people will be treated fairly." Rivera's expression did not change. "We don't surrender to invaders." "Our answer is no." "Then you will die," Zexhai replied simply. "Maybe," Rivera said, "but we'll take as many of you with us as we can." The human colonel returned to his lines, and both sides prepared for battle. Zexhai positioned his forces according to standard Caltharian tactics. His soldiers would advance in formation, using their superior firepower to destroy the human positions. The battle would be over in minutes. At dawn, the attack began. Caltharian soldiers moved across the field in perfect order, their energy weapons charging and ready. They expected the humans to break and run when faced with such overwhelming force. Instead, the opposite happened. The humans opened fire while the Caltharians were still half a mile away. Their weapons were primitive projectile guns, but they fired with deadly accuracy. Bullets bounced off Caltharian armor, but the constant barrage was unsettling. Some shots found gaps in the protection, and several soldiers fell. More disturbing was the human tactics. They did not stand and fight in formation, as civilized soldiers should. Instead, they used the terrain to their advantage, moving from position to position like hunting animals. They appeared from unexpected angles, fired quick bursts, and then disappeared before the Caltharians could respond. "Sir, the humans are not fighting according to standard military doctrine," Captain Rex Tar reported over the communication system. "They are using guerrilla tactics." Zexhai had studied such warfare, but he had never faced it personally. Most civilized species fought with honor, meeting their enemies in direct combat. These humans fought like predators, using stealth and cunning instead of strength. The battle raged for hours. Every time the Caltharians advanced, the humans would fall back, only to attack from a different direction. They targeted communication equipment, weapon emplacements, and supply lines. They seemed to know exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. As the sun reached its peak, Zexhai witnessed something that shook him to his core. A small group of human soldiers had been surrounded by his forces. They were trapped in a crater with no hope of escape. Any rational being would surrender at this point. Instead, they fought harder. One soldier, a young woman with short brown hair, was clearly a medic. She wore a Red Cross symbol on her uniform and carried medical supplies instead of heavy weapons. When one of her comrades was shot, she ran into the open field under heavy fire to reach him. Energy blasts struck the ground around her, but she did not stop. She reached the wounded soldier and began dragging him toward cover. Multiple shots hit her, but she kept moving until she got her patient to safety. Only then did she collapse, her life bleeding away in the dirt. The wounded soldier she had saved picked up her weapon and charged the Caltharian position alone. He screamed her name as he ran, his voice full of rage and grief. The man's attack was hopeless, but he fought with such fury that he actually broke through the first line of defense before falling. Zexhai lowered his weapon and stared at the scene. In all his battles across the galaxy, he had never seen anything like this. The humans fought not just for victory, but for each other. They were willing to die for their comrades. Without hesitation, as night fell, both sides withdrew to their positions. The Caltharians had superior firepower and technology, but they had not won the day. The humans had given ground grudgingly, making them pay for every advance. That night, Zexhai studied human military history on his personal computer. What he found disturbed him greatly. These creatures had been fighting each other for thousands of years. Their entire civilization had been shaped by warfare. They had developed increasingly deadly weapons and tactics, surviving multiple wars that should have destroyed them completely. They were not a young, primitive species as the intelligence reports claimed. They were survivors, tested by countless conflicts and hardened by constant struggle. The Caltharian Empire had not invaded a weak world. They had attacked a planet full of natural-born warriors. As he prepared his report for the High Command, Zexhai realized he had made a terrible mistake. The humans were not going to surrender. They were going to fight until the very end, and they were going to make it cost more than anyone had imagined. 3 weeks had passed since the fighting began, and Zexhai found himself staring at a problem he had never expected to face. The city of Denver lay before his forces like a massive fortress, its buildings transformed into defensive positions. Every window held a sniper, every street was blocked with barriers, and every rooftop bristled with weapons. The humans had not fled as predicted. Instead, they had done something that defied all military logic. The civilian population had armed themselves and joined the defense. Old men carried ammunition, women operated communication systems, and children as young as 12 years old served as messengers and spotters. "Sir, we have lost another assault team," Captain Rex Tar reported, his voice heavy with frustration. "The humans have turned the eastern shopping district into a killing field. They know exactly where we will attack, and they are ready for us." Zexhai studied the tactical display with growing concern. His forces had superior weapons and armor, but the humans had something else. They adapted to everything the Caltharians did. When energy weapons proved effective, the humans found new ways to take cover. When Caltharian troops advanced in formation, the humans attacked from unexpected angles. "How many casualties?" Zexhai asked. 15 dead, 23 wounded, Rexstar replied. "The humans are using our own tactics against us. They study our movements and find weaknesses in our armor." The commander walked to the observation window and looked out at the city. Smoke rose from dozens of fires, and the sound of gunfire echoed constantly. This was supposed to be a simple occupation, but it had become a nightmare of urban warfare. A human engineer named Pete Williams had become a particular problem. The man had somehow learned to modify human explosives to penetrate Caltharian energy shields. His improvised weapons were crude but effective, and he had taught other humans how to make them. "Sir, we have intercepted human communications," the intelligence officer reported. "They are calling for volunteers to join something called the Denver Resistance. People are coming from other cities to help defend this place." Zexhai felt a chill run down his spine. The humans were not just defending their city. They were treating this as a symbol of their species' refusal to surrender. Every human who died fighting here made the others more determined to resist. The next assault began at dawn. Caltharian troops advanced through the city streets. their heavy weapons destroying barricades and buildings. The humans fell back slowly, making the invaders pay for every block they took. The fighting was brutal and personal, with both sides, using every dirty trick they could think of. During the advance on the Eastern District, HFY's command squad became separated from the main force. Human fighters had collapsed a building across the street, cutting off their retreat. Energy weapons fire came from multiple directions, and his soldiers took cover behind the rubble of a destroyed car. "Commander, we need to move," Rexstar shouted. Over the noise of battle, "The humans are trying to surround us." HFY looked around desperately for an escape route. The buildings on both sides were full of human fighters, and more were moving to block their path. His personal shields were running low on power, and his ammunition was nearly gone. That was when the explosion hit. A human rocket struck the building above them, bringing down tons of concrete and steel. HFY was thrown to the ground. His armor cracked and his vision blurred. Pain shot through his body as debris rained down around him. When the dust settled, he found himself alone and badly wounded. His communication system was damaged, and he could not contact his forces. Blood ran from cuts on his face and arms, and his left leg refused to support his weight. The sound of human voices grew closer as they searched the rubble for survivors. HFY crawled into the basement of a nearby building, hoping to hide until his soldiers could find him. The space was dark and cramped, filled with boxes and old furniture. He collapsed against a wall, fighting to stay conscious as his injuries took their toll. "Hello," a voice said softly. "Are you hurt?" HFY spun around, raising his weapon toward the sound. A human child stood at the bottom of the stairs, a girl of perhaps 15 years with blonde hair and concerned eyes. She should have been screaming or running away, but instead she looked at him with what appeared to be sympathy. "Stay back," HFY warned, though his voice was weak. "I am your enemy." "You're bleeding," the girl said, stepping closer despite the danger. "My parents are doctors. They can help you." Before HFY could respond, 2 adult humans appeared on the stairs. The man was tall and thin with graying hair, while the woman was shorter with kind eyes. They moved carefully, their hands visible and empty of weapons. "I'm John Carter, and this is my wife, Mary," the man said. "Our daughter Katie found you. You need medical attention." HFY could not understand what was happening. These humans should have killed him or turned him over to their military. Instead, they were offering to help him. It made no sense according to everything he knew about warfare. "Why?" he asked weakly. "Because it's the right thing to do," Mary answered simply. "War doesn't mean we have to lose our humanity." The family helped him to a hidden room behind the basement wall. They cleaned his wounds and bandaged his injuries, working with gentle hands despite knowing he was their enemy. Katie brought him water and food, chatting about her school and her friends as if he were a normal visitor. "My grandfather fought in World War II," John said as he worked on HFY's damaged leg. "He told me stories about the war. He said the worst thing about fighting was how it made people forget they were dealing with other living beings." HFY studied the human's face, looking for deception or hidden motives. He found none. These people were helping him because they believed it was morally right, not because they hoped to gain anything from it. Over the next 2 days, as his wounds healed, HFY learned more about human nature than all his intelligence reports had taught him. Katie brought him books and tried to teach him English words. John shared stories of human history, explaining how his people had always fought against overwhelming odds. "We're not the strongest species," John explained. "We're not the fastest or the smartest, but we don't give up. When someone tries to destroy us, we fight back. When someone needs help, we help them. It's what makes us human." Mary showed him pictures of their family, telling him about their hopes and dreams for the future. They had been planning to send Katie to college to help her become a teacher. The war had changed everything, but they still believed in building a better world. "Your people think we're primitive," Mary said. "Maybe our technology isn't as advanced as yours. But we understand something that your empire seems to have forgotten. Every life has value, even the life of an enemy." On the third day, Zexai's injuries had healed enough for him to move. The fighting above had moved to other parts of the city, giving him a chance to rejoin his forces. The Carter family helped him reach the surface, knowing they might never see him again. "Thank you," he said, the words feeling strange in his mouth. "I will not forget your kindness." "Just remember that we're not monsters," Katie said. "We're just people trying to live our lives. We fight because we have to, not because we want to." As Zexai made his way back to Caltharian lines, his mind was filled with new thoughts. The humans were not the primitive savages his people believed them to be. They were complex beings capable of both incredible violence and unexpected mercy. He had come to Earth to conquer a weak species. Instead, he had discovered something that would change him forever. The humans were not just defending their world. They were defending their right to be human, and that made them more dangerous than any weapon in the galaxy. Zexai returned to his command post with a mind full of questions that had no easy answers. The kindness of the Carter family had shaken everything he believed about warfare and conquest. How could beings capable of such mercy also fight with such deadly determination? The contradiction puzzled him in ways that no enemy had ever done before. "Commander, welcome back," Captain Rextar said with relief. "We thought you were dead. The humans have been broadcasting propaganda saying they captured you." "I survived," Zexai replied simply. He decided not to mention the human family that had saved his life. His officers would not understand, and explaining would only raise questions he was not ready to answer. "Sir, we have a serious problem," Rextar continued. "Our orbital sensors are detecting massive ship movements throughout the human solar system. Vessels are converging on Earth from multiple directions." Zexai studied the tactical display with growing alarm. Ships were approaching from Mars, Europa, Titan, and other human colonies. The fleet was larger than anything the intelligence reports had predicted. Where had all these vessels come from? "How many ships are we facing?" he asked. "Over 300 vessels of various sizes," the sensor officer reported. "They appear to be both military and civilian ships that have been armed for combat." The human reinforcements arrived in waves over the next several days. Zexai watched from his command center as the enemy fleet took positions around Earth. The ships were a mix of military vessels, cargo haulers, mining equipment, and even passenger liners that had been converted for war. Leading the human fleet was Admiral Grace Thompson aboard the UES Liberty. The woman was older than most military officers, with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had served in the human colonial wars and knew how to fight against superior technology. "Commander Zexai," Admiral Thompson said when she opened communications. "I am Admiral Grace Thompson of the United Earth Defense Force. You have invaded our world and killed our people. This ends now." "You cannot defeat us," Zexai replied, though he felt less certain than his words suggested. "We have superior weapons and defenses. Your ships are no match for Caltharian technology." "We'll see about that," Thompson said before. Ending the transmission, the human strategy became clear within hours. Instead of attacking the main Caltharian fleet directly, they began targeting supply lines and support vessels. Small groups of human ships would appear suddenly, strike quickly, and disappear before the Caltharians could respond. The attacks were not random. The humans had studied Caltharian tactics and found their weaknesses. They knew which ships carried supplies, which vessels were used for communication, and which commanders were most important to the overall strategy. "Sir, they are not fighting like a traditional fleet," Captain Rexstar observed. "They are using guerrilla tactics in space, just like they do on the ground." Zexhai nodded grimly. The humans were applying the same principles that had made them so effective in ground combat. They refused to engage in direct battles they could not win, instead choosing to wear down their enemies through constant harassment and surprise attacks. The situation grew worse when human forces began using suicide attacks. Ships that were damaged or running low on ammunition would charge directly at Caltharian vessels, trying to ram them before exploding. The tactic was crude but effective, and it showed a level of commitment that disturbed the alien commander. "They are willing to die for their cause," Zexhai said quietly. "Every single one of them." The turning point came during what humans later called the Battle of the Pacific Fleet. Captain Rick Barnes commanded the U.S. Defiance, a heavy cruiser that had been converted from an old cargo vessel. The ship was outgunned and outmatched, but Barnes led his fleet in a direct assault on the Caltharian command ships .ZEX HA. I watched the battle from his flagship, amazed by the human tactics. They fought with perfect coordination, each ship supporting the others in a complex dance of destruction. When one vessel was crippled, another would move to protect it. When ammunition ran low, damaged ships would ram enemy vessels rather than retreat. The Defiance fought at the center of the battle, its weapons blazing as it engaged multiple Caltharian ships. The vessel took hit after hit, but Captain Barnes refused to withdraw. His crew fought with the same determination their captain showed, keeping the ship operational even as sections were destroyed around them. "Sir, the human vessel is badly damaged," the weapons officer reported. "They should surrender now." Instead, the opposite happened. When the Defiance's weapons were destroyed and its engines were failing, Barnes ordered his crew to abandon ship. The lifeboats launched quickly, carrying the survivors to safety. But the captain remained on the bridge, his hands on the controls. "This is Captain Rick Barnes to all Caltharian vessels," the human broadcast. "Remember this moment. Remember that humans never give up." The Defiance turned toward the Caltharian flagship, its damaged engines pushing the ship forward on a collision course. Barnes had turned his vessel into a guided missile, aimed directly at the heart of the enemy fleet. The explosion was visible from orbit. The Defiance struck the Caltharian command ship with tremendous force, destroying both vessels instantly. The blast damaged 2 other ships and left the fleet without its primary command structure. Zexhai felt something he had never experienced before. It was not fear or anger, but a deep respect for an enemy who had shown such courage. Captain Barnes had sacrificed his life to protect his people, and in doing so, he had delivered a blow that would change the course of the war. "Sir, we have lost contact with the flagship," Rexstar reported. "Admiral Coltex is dead. The fleet is requesting new orders." Zexhai stared at the wreckage floating in space. The humans had been outgunned and outnumbered, but they had fought with a ferocity that defied understanding. They turned their weakness into strength, their desperation into determination. "Commander, what are your orders?" Rexstar asked. "Pull back to defensive positions," Zexhai said quietly. "I need to study these humans more carefully." That night, Zexhai accessed the human information networks that his intelligence teams had cracked. He read about their history, their culture, and their wars. What he found changed everything he thought he knew about this species. The humans were not a young race, as the reports claimed. They were survivors who had endured countless conflicts, natural disasters, and near-extinction events. Their technology had advanced rapidly because they had always faced threats that forced them to innovate or die. They had fought wars against each other for thousands of years, developing tactics and strategies that no other species had ever needed. They understood warfare in ways that peaceful civilizations could not imagine. They had learned to fight with inferior weapons against superior enemies, and they had survived because they never stopped adapting. But more than that, they had developed something that no other species possessed. They fought not just for victory, but for ideals. They would die to protect their families, their freedoms, and their way of life. This made them more dangerous than any weapon or technology. "We made a mistake," Zexhai said to himself as he studied the data. "We thought we were invading a weak world. Instead, we have attacked a planet full of natural warriors who have been preparing for this fight their entire history." The realization hit him like a physical blow. The Caltharian Empire had not discovered an easy conquest. They had found an enemy that might be strong enough to destroy them. The humans were not just defending their world. They were showing the galaxy what happened when someone tried to take away their freedom. And now, Zexhai understood why the Carter family had helped him. They were not weak or foolish. They were showing him that humans could choose mercy even in the midst of war. That choice made them more human, and it made them more dangerous than any species that fought only for conquest. The war was far from over, but Zexhai already knew who would win. The humans would never surrender, and they would never stop fighting. They would pay any price to protect their world, and that price would be higher than the Caltharian Empire could afford to pay. The message from the Caltharian High Command arrived 3 days after the Battle of the Pacific Fleet. Zexhai read it with growing horror, his compound eyes scanning the words again and again to make sure he understood correctly. "Commander Zexhai, your mission has failed to achieve the expected results. The humans have proven more resistant than anticipated. By order of the Supreme Council, you are authorized to deploy biological weapon, designation Plague 7. Complete elimination of all human life on Earth must be accomplished within 1 week." Zexhai set down the communication device with trembling hands. Plague 7 was the most deadly weapon in the Caltharian arsenal. It was designed to target specific genetic markers, killing only the intended species while leaving everything else untouched. Within days, every human on Earth would be dead. "Sir, the weapon has been delivered to your flagship," Captain Rexstar reported. "The deployment system is ready for your command. How long until it takes effect?" Zexhai asked, though he already knew the answer. 72 hours for complete coverage of the planet. No human will survive." Zexhai walked to the observation deck and stared down at Earth. The blue and green world looked so peaceful from space, but he knew that billions of people lived on its surface. Men, women, and children who had never harmed anyone. Families like the Carters who had shown him kindness when they should have killed him. "Commander, are you well?" Rexstar asked, noticing his superior's troubled expression. "I need time to think," Zexhai replied. "Give me 1 hour, then we will proceed." Zexhai retreated to his private quarters and activated his personal computer. He pulled up the files he had collected about human history and culture. Images of their art, their music, their literature filled the screen. These were not monsters or savages. They were a species capable of creating beauty and meaning in their brief lives. He thought about Lisa Chun, the medic who had died saving her comrade. About Captain Rick Barnes, who had sacrificed his life to protect his people. About Katie Carter, who had brought him books and tried to teach him English words. All of them would die if he followed his orders. But what choice did he have? He was a soldier of the Caltharian Empire, sworn to obey the commands of his superiors. If he refused to deploy the weapon, he would be branded a traitor and executed. Another commander would be sent to complete the mission. Zexhai accessed the human communication networks and watched their news broadcasts. The reporters spoke of the war with fear, but also with determination. They interviewed soldiers who had lost friends in battle it still spoke of hope for the future. They showed children being evacuated from war zones, their faces scared but not defeated. "We will not surrender," one human general said during a press conference. "We will fight until the last breath leaves our bodies. This is our world, our home, and we will defend it no matter the cost." The words struck Zex-Hi like a physical blow. The humans would never give up, even if it meant their complete destruction. They would fight against impossible odds because it was better to die. Free than to live as slaves. He thought about his own people, the Caltharian Empire that had sent him on this mission. They had conquered dozens of worlds, enslaved countless species, and built their civilization on the suffering of others. They called it progress, but what had they really accomplished? The Caltharians had superior technology, but they had lost the ability to create anything beautiful. They had powerful weapons, but they had forgotten how to show mercy. They had built a vast empire, but they had no idea what it meant to sacrifice for something greater than themselves. "Sir, it is time," Rexstar announced over the communication system. "The High Command is waiting for confirmation of weapon deployment." Zex-Hi made his decision. He walked to the weapons storage bay, where Plague 7 waited in its sealed container. The device was small, no larger than a human briefcase, but it contained enough death to wipe out an entire species. He picked up the container and carried it to the nearest airlock. Rexstar and several other officers followed him, confused by their commander's actions. "Sir, what are you doing?" Rexstar asked. "Something that should have been done long ago," Zex-Hi replied. He placed the weapon container in the airlock and sealed the inner door. Then he activated the ejection sequence. The container was blasted out into space, tumbling away from the ship toward the sun's gravity well. "Commander, you have just destroyed our most valuable weapon," Rexstar said in shock. "The High Command will execute you for this." "I know," Zex-Hi replied calmly. "But I cannot be the one to destroy an entire species. Not these humans." He walked to the main communication array and opened a channel to the Caltharian High Command. The faces of the Supreme Council appeared on the screen, their expressions cold and demanding. "Commander Zex-Hi, confirm deployment of Plague 7, the Chief Counselor ordered. "I cannot do that," Zex-Hi replied. "I have destroyed the weapon." The silence that followed was deafening. The council members stared at him with a mixture of rage and disbelief. No Caltharian commander had ever disobeyed a direct order from the Supreme Council. "You are a traitor to your own species," the Chief Counselor said. "You will be arrested and executed." "Perhaps," Zex-Hi said, "but I will not be the one who committed genocide against a species that deserves to live." He opened a broadcast to all human communication networks. His image appeared on television screens, computer monitors, and communication devices across Earth. Millions of humans saw him for the first time, not as a conqueror, but as something else entirely. "People of Earth," he began, his voice carrying across the planet. "I am Commander Zex-Hi of the Caltharian Empire. I was sent to conquer your world and destroy your species. But I have learned something that my people do not understand. You are not our enemies. You are our teachers." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "You have shown me what it means to fight for something greater than yourself. You have demonstrated courage in the face of impossible odds. You have proven that even enemies can be shown mercy and kindness." The broadcast continued for several minutes as Zex-Hi explained what he had learned about humanity. He told them about the biological weapon that had been destroyed, about the Caltharian Empire's plans for their world, and about his decision to protect them instead of destroying them. "I cannot undo the damage that has been done," he concluded, "but I can ensure that no other weapons like Plague 7 will be used against you. The galaxy needs to know that humanity is not a species to be conquered, but one to be respected. War ended not with victory or defeat, but with a ceasefire. The Caltharian Empire, shocked by their commander's betrayal, withdrew their forces from Earth. They branded Zexhai a traitor and sentenced him to death. But they also began to question their own actions. Zexhai chose to remain on Earth. He could never return to his own people, but he had found something more valuable than an empire. He had found a species that could change the hearts of their enemies through their example. He settled in a small town in Colorado, not far from where he had first encountered the Carter family. The local humans were suspicious at first, but gradually they accepted him. He wrote a book about his experiences, hoping to prevent future conflicts between species. Years later, when the first human explorers ventured into Caltharian space, they were met with caution rather than hostility. The galaxy had learned that humanity was not a species to be underestimated. They were survivors, fighters, and something far more dangerous than any weapon. They were beings capable of changing their enemies into allies, of showing mercy to those who had shown them none. They proved that the greatest victory was not the destruction of one's enemies, but their transformation into friends. Zexhai lived the rest of his life on Earth, a living reminder that even in the darkest times, the human spirit could shine, bright enough to change the galaxy itself. He had come to destroy them, but they had changed him forever. And in doing so, they had saved not just themselves, but countless other species that would never face the threat of Caltharian conquest. Again,